It's an equity issue. We do not have.
All right, we're live, folks. Good morning. It is Wednesday, March 18th. Shortly after 9:45. Our first order of business is H 902, an act relating to approval of amendments to the charter of the city of Barry. We're doing an introduction and walkthrough today, and we are joined with Representative Booten. He is a sponsor of this, with Representative Wazazak, who is sequestered in Ways and Means. How are you, sir?
I am doing well, and yourself?
Money week, it's moving.
All right. Just for the record again, Michael Booten, Barry City Representative. Representative Teddy Wazazek was unable to make it today. However, I'm pretty well versed in our charter language and the history of it. So I can just start off the first part of it is we currently have it set up so that any real estate deals have to be signed by the mayor. And this particular charter change, 313, is to also allow the city manager or any counselor duly authorized by an action of the city council. So this is very important for process because sometimes the manager's out. We just had our manager leave the country for 3 months. Sometimes the mayor's unavailable. Not 3 months, 3 weeks.
I was gonna say that's a notable hiatus.
Thank you for the looks.
Very gracious vacation package.
That would be a very gracious vacation package. One that I would love to have. But that being said, so it's just allowing more flexibility in that process. The process of allowing it doesn't change. It's just having someone sign it. The city council still has to sign off on those deals. 601 is just increasing the amount of reserve that we can maintain. For historical context, originally Barry City had a 0%. So any money that was collected would immediately have to go back into our budget to buy down the rate. About 10 years ago, while on city council, we made the decision to raise that to 5% so that we can maintain some of those money that may have rolled over into the next year so that we didn't have to borrow any funds. Unfortunately, we have not been in the role of being able to collect or not collect, but retain some of that money. For the most part, but we do want to raise it to 10% just to be on the safe side. The vote, because it did have to go before the city for the changing of signatures or who has to do that, it was passed by 522 to 293. And then the charter change for the reserves to increase from 5% to 10% was approved 612, 174. So the idea of the city being able to maintain those reserves was far more accepted than having more people to sign documents than the mayor. Interesting fun fact. Not sure why that was the case. Okay, that's it. So the motion is to approve. No.
All right, any questions for the member before we shift over to council? Pretty straightforward. Okay, seeing no hands. All right, sir.
Kicking me out?
You were released.
You have a wonderful day.
You too, sir.
And thank you, by the way.
Wonderful. Hope you have fun memories of the room.
But you know what? Maybe I'll stick with it.
Hey, sir, how are you?
Good morning. For the record, Tucker Anderson, Legislative Counsel. You should have in front of you H 902 as introduced, which proposes amendments to the charter of the city of Barry. You just heard an excellent summary overview of the two proposals within the bill. I'll give you a quick 50,000-foot overview of what those two proposals are, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. So we're going to focus on the operative provisions of the bill, which are always in section 2 of charter bills. This amends the City of Barry Charter in sections 313 and section 601. Starting in section 313, related to the sale or lease of city property, as the representative explained, this allows the city manager, any councilor duly authorized of the city council to sign approval for the sale or lease of city property. So it adds those officers as signatory parties, authorized signatory parties. In section 601, this amends subsection B related to end of fiscal year audits. We'll work through the section here. You let me know if you have any questions. At the close of the fiscal year audit, any unexpended funds remaining from the city budget may be retained if approved by the council as an undesignated fund balance for future use. You should be familiar with how these work because just last session, this committee and House Ways and Means advanced a proposal in the emergency management omnibus bill that allowed any municipal corporation in the state to exercise the same authority with respect to undesignated fund balances. Any funds retained pursuant to this provision shall be limited to an amount not greater than 10% of the city general fund budget expenses for the most recent voter approved fiscal year. Any amount remaining in excess of that amount must be used in subsequent budget to reduce the tax rate. To explain how this jives with the general authority that passed just last year, this is more restrictive than what is in place for other municipal corporations in the state. So the way that the general law is now structured is that at the end of a fiscal year, any funds that were not spent in the fiscal year for an approved budget item can just be transferred by vote of the legislative body of the municipal corporation into an undesignated fund balance that can be carried over from year to year. So there's no restrictions on that ability once the end of the fiscal year comes. So this is a little more specific than what is allowed under the general law now. Happy to answer any questions you have. That's all that is contained within the four corners of H902.
Okay. But yes, I had my head down, so I didn't see who raised first. Or you, Rich.
I was wondering if the authority to sign leases, is that something that's specified only in the Barry Charter, just out of curiosity, or is that normally specified?
I'm not aware of other municipalities that have added this to their charter. Under general law, there's authority that is granted to an agent specified by the legislative body. And there used to be an appointed position universally for municipal corporations called the town agent. It was responsible for being the party that would sign these sorts of agreements. But there was cleanup to the town agent language along with a few other municipal offices, say 6 or 7 years ago. And having a town agent, otherwise known as a town attorney, is less common now than it was at the time those statutes were in place.
So cities that don't have any of that language, it would default to whatever
Their agent is.
And or
Yes.
the legislative body would be.
And, that gives, under the general law structure, it gives the municipal corporation the authority to change the agents for particular types of transactions and have different designated parties carrying that authority. But those municipalities do have to designate an officer to be the agent for purposes of conveying real estate and then record under current law that designation. That way, if there's ever any question about whether in chain of title, whether the municipal corporation actually fully and legally released the lands to an individual, you have a document from the city council stating who the designated officer is and showing what their signature looks like. So there's still some bureaucratic heft to that process under general law.
I'm good. My next question was going to be for the city manager, so we'll wait for after his testimony, but thank you.
Anything for council? Thank you, council.
Thank you all.
And how you doing, sir? Good to see you again.
See you all. Thank you, members of the committee. Appreciate you, taking up this bill and allowing me to testify. I really, what I was going to say has been covered, so I won't repeat it. The only piece I will add that wasn't mentioned is on the fund balance piece. This is a really important provision for us. This was really important for our flood recovery. When the 23-24 floods hit, we did maintain a 5% fund balance. Which was created, that the fund balance has really been created by vacancies, which I think is probably familiar to many of your communities. We struggle, like many other places, to fill positions. We've been carrying 3 or 4 vacancies in our police department for many years in our public works. And so that's how our fund balance has really been created. When the 23-24 floods hit, we were right at just about our 5% limit. And that was really important for us because, as you know, we have to front all the costs for FEMA recovery, right? And so we set up mechanisms for us to be able to pay for the flood recovery costs and the rebuilding costs. We had lines of credit, but because we had a fund balance of this 5%, we didn't have to actually borrow a nickel to pay for our flood recovery. We were able to front load the costs of the FEMA recovery. We were able to then sustain ourselves. We got a bridge from the legislature after the 23 floods, and we were able to, by using our fund balance, not have to borrow anything and then wait for the FEMA reimbursements to come in and recover. And so that was a really important mechanism for us to have, to not sort of sink further into crisis by having those reserves built up. So that's why, having this 10% is giving us a little bit more security. And it's really, I know the Legislative Council mentioned that it's even more restrictive than is allowed by state law. It's more, we've looked at other city charters. It's way more restrictive than many others. We looked at Montpelier, for example, Winooski. They have some pretty general authority to carry over without limits. So anyway, I just wanted to add that little piece that from a financial standpoint, this was also really important for us to help us be able to recover from the flooding without going into debt, which would have been just another sort of crisis on top of the physical recovery we had to do. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time and happy to answer any questions.
Rep Coffin.
Yeah, I just had one more on 601 section B.
Yep.
At the close of the fiscal year, and it adds the word audit. When did you normally audit? Was that at the end of the fiscal year or somewhere in between?
Yeah, we're actually undergoing it right now for FY25, so it's usually about a year lagged. So typically we moved our town meeting day has been moved to May, and so we typically have our audit for the preceding year done right around this time of year. We expect to have it hopefully the first week of April. So we're typically making this decision on the fund balance about a year lag. So we'd be making a decision on a fund balance using sort of the prior year's numbers, the way this is set up.
Okay, because we're added in the word audit. That's why I was trying to make sure where you were actually, if it was before your budget or after your budget, that you're figuring out what you would have in excess.
Yeah, and that's a great question, Representative. We added that question in because that word in because to give us sort of certainty on the timing, because otherwise, throughout the year, we could be making estimates about what a fund balance might be or what an excess might be. But if we have it tagged to the audit, that's a pretty specific milestone that gives us, the council and residents, certainty about how we're making that decision about that carryover.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Rep Waters Evans.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I remember reading in the news last year that there was a controversy that I'm not quite sure exactly what happened, but it was about a building sale in Barry. And I'm wondering if this change to the charter has anything to do with that, or if it's a result of that situation. And if so, can you explain that to me a little bit?
Sure, happy to explain it. So this piece wouldn't detect that. We've had a building in downtown that's been vacant for 15, 20 years, that the old JG Newberry's building. It's a situation where we, just an unfortunate out-of-town landlords that have kept it in disrepair, kept it vacant, sort of asked exorbitant prices for it. So the controversy or the hubbub we had locally was there was an effort to purchase the building by Barry Area Development Corporation, which is sort of an economic development organization that's not part of the city but loosely affiliated with us. And the city council contributed. The sale price for that building was estimated to be $1 million. The city council pledged $400,000 of ARPA funding to buy that building. So the controversy was there were people who had lined up sort of for and against the purchase. And so this wasn't a sale of city property. This was an acquisition, which is a sort of a nuance between the language here. Ultimately, the purchase was successful, and the city now owns that building, and we're planning to redevelop it. But that was sort of the commotion locally last year about real estate.
Okay, so this only goes in one direction. It's not they can buy stuff. Just one person has the authority.
It talks about the sale or lease of city property. Yeah.
Okay, all right. And can you explain to me when it says a counselor duly authorized by an action of the city council? Does that mean that they have to take a vote like they would vote on anything else?
Exactly. Yeah, that would be sort of we would take an action at a city council meeting preceding the sale. And so, for example, if the mayor was going to be out of town or unavailable to execute the purchase documents, we would say, Councilor so-and-so is authorized by the city council. Move that Councilor Smith is authorized to execute any purchase and sale documents related to this transaction. And then that counselor would be present to sign the paperwork, or they could do that for me as well, that the city manager.
Yeah. And do you have an idea of how often the city council sells or leases property?
We have sold one piece of property since I've been city manager. I've been manager since 22. We sold a Wheelock building, which is a historic old little law office in Barry City. We sold it to Fox Market. So that was one in almost 4 years. It's not very often. We don't really own a lot of real estate. I mean, we may be the next piece of property, frankly, we may sell is that building that I alluded to earlier that we've acquired, and we're looking to sell to a developer to build housing. So it's not too frequent. We really own just the basic sort of, we own City Hall, we own the Civic Center, which is the auditorium and the ice arena. We own the public safety building and our water plants and wastewater plants, but we don't really own a lot of real estate other than that, besides this building that we've now come into for development reasons.
Yeah. I'm a hockey player. I've spent a lot of time at that ice arena.
It's the best ice. It's the best ice in central Vermont because it's so cold in there.
It is quite chilly. That's how the moms rate those ranks. How cold is it in there?
Yeah.
And then I had one more question. I'm just curious about this. That's all. I don't really know a lot about it. But my other question is, and I'm not against this name. I'm just wondering, I guess why I was asking earlier is that is there ever such a need, like if the mayor's out of town, that someone else would need to like urgently sign off on a real estate deal? Are you trying to ward off something specific, or are you worried about a specific situation? I'm just wondering what
this
the inspiration is.
It's not really driven by anything in particular. I mean, we haven't had any issues with this. It's really more of a, we did purchase a building. So we purchased a building from for our new public works garage that was owned by the mayor. And so this, we've been more cognizant about who's authorized and not authorized to take these actions. And so there's nothing really specific about it. I was, as Representative Budin alluded to, I was just out for 3 weeks. There's times when the mayor may be out for time as well. And so it's really just to not find ourselves in a legal conundrum if something like this were to emerge. So no specific actions or concerns or nothing forthcoming that we're really worried about. It's more about we're just more cognizant of our charter as we made some acquisitions on the other end of the equation. And so it's really just trying to have good government and not get into a legal pickle if we can avoid it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else for the city manager? No, thank you. We had some time in the schedule, so we felt we'll be checking in with you folks on this one. So we'll flag this for further discussion in the coming weeks once we get through crossover. And then, I mean, you know the drill. That's like charter season for us. It's like charter season. Yeah. So,
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time and your questions. It was great speaking with you.
yeah, of course, of course. All right, committee, we have no shortage of bills floating around this building, so let's keep an eye on our assignments. I know Rep. Nugent and I both have to go to Senate GovOps today to speak to bills that went over there. You have OPR, I have regional governance. And then we have in about a half hour, we're going to reconvene to in 15 minutes. Sorry. 20 minutes. We're going to reconvene on the amendment to H917. But everybody's all aware of what's going on there. So it needs no additional primer. With that, Nick, please take us off.